So that terror attack in Manchester once again bringing to the forefront the issue of travel restrictions from predominantly Muslim countries. The parents of 22-year-old Salman Abedi were refugees from Libya, one of the 6 countries mentioned in the president's order, which has been stalled in the courts. The refugee crisis, a topic of discussion this morning between President Trump and Pope Francis.
Immigration itself did not come up. Migration has come up because of the real challenge that Italy in particular faces with migration out of North Africa.
Chris Plante is a syndicated radio talk show host of The Chris Plante Show. Leslie Marshall is a syndicated radio talk show host and a Fox News contributor. Good to see you both.
Hey, Shannon.
Good to see you, Shannon.
Leslie, what do you make of this conversation now going on in Europe where tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people have immigrated all through the country? They've got very open borders, and there are now people there saying, we feel like it's too late for some of us with these acts and these things that are going to happen, and the U.S. should learn a lesson.
I don't agree with that, and this is why. What we look at with this family that have been for over 2 decades as part of the Manchester community, the radicalization happened very recently if you just look at the historical chain of events, at least in this specific situation. This was a British-born individual who, if hypothetically went to Syria or Libya or anywhere else for training and then came to the United States, well, a ban in place from Libya or some of the other Muslim majority nations that are listed would not stop. The problem is that the banning and the borders don't stop the border of the mind and the computer that has no borders, and that's how ISIS is recruiting individuals over the internet. What we need to find is who they're recruiting and why, and stop that. And a ban, a wall, tighter borders here or in Europe is not going to change that.
But Leslie, are you saying a ban on travel from Libya, which is what President Trump was attempting, it's locked up in the courts now, wouldn't have stopped this young man from coming here because he's on a British passport?
It would, but if we look at the terrorist attacks in this country, you know, and if we look at not just attacks, I mean, it's almost like we forget that we have so many other attacks, mass shootings, murders, you know, based in hate, obviously. That doesn't stop the death. That doesn't stop the carnage here. And it doesn't even stop the terrorism, because there are many people who right now are born in this country who are being radicalized as we speak. That's what we have to stop.
Well, Chris, but law enforcement here in the U.S. also tells us there are hundreds of people who came here as refugees that are the subjects of counter-terror investigations. We know that's part of the reality.
Right, and beyond that, listen, the Pew Research people have been studying for years attitudes in the Muslim world, and they find that here's the question they ask: do you support suicide bombing of civilian targets in defense of Islam? And the numbers are absolutely startling. They're shocking for Muslims around the world, and the numbers have been going down in the last 10 years, but at 1% is insane. 15%, and we have about 20% of the United States, the last time Pew asked American Muslims this question. There is only one group of people on the planet Earth that would answer yes to that question. Anybody, you ask Lutherans, you ask Buddhists, you ask atheists, do you support suicide bombing of civilian targets in defense of anything? And they'll look at you like you're insane for asking the question. But if you ask Muslims around the world that very same question, suicide bombing of civilian targets in defense of Islam, you find shocking numbers. So it becomes a statistical certainty. The greater the number of Muslims, the greater the number of suicide bombings and similar attacks we've had. We've had San Bernardino and the Pulse nightclub in Orlando. Those are shooting attacks. It's the same thing. Attacking civilian targets, murdering people wholesale in the name of Islam is peculiar to Islam, and talking about borders and walls and how we have shootings here is all irrelevant to this particular threat that we're dealing with worldwide, and it is peculiar to Islam. Islam should do something about it. Has there been a peace march led by Muslims in England in the last 48 hours, in the last 48 years at any time? Because there is a peculiar problem, a unique problem with Islam, and we have to admit that and face it and stop playing games and saying, yes, we have crime and we have other shootings and a lot of people murdered in Chicago. That's not what we're talking about here. People were murdered in Chicago during World War II also, but that wasn't equal to Nazi Germany or Imperial Japan.
All right. Chris and Leslie, you've heard both sides there. We thank you both for joining us. It's a debate that will continue.
Thanks, Shannon.